So now we're going to tell a little bit of a different story. One that has probably been told just as many times as The Legend of Zelda, but maybe a little bit darker, a little bit damper, a little bit madder. So we played The Sinking City. All three of us have. I reviewed it, and Leigh has played a big chunk of it, and Derrick's kind of dipped his toe into it a little bit. Yep. This is... You know what, Leigh? I'm going to let you take this one, because you know a little bit more about the lineage than I do. And then we'll talk about what we all think of it.
Well done it. It's an investigative, semi-horror, psychological thriller detective game with elements of almost like murdered suspect style, fantastical puzzle solving or mystery solving, mixed with a little bit of sort of combat, I guess you could say.
Yeah, sort of combat is a good way to put it.
Yep. It's one of those games I think you probably give a lot more goodwill if you're into the lore or the basis of the story. If you're into your Lovecraft stuff, I think that carries it a long way.
Mm-hmm.
It's commitment to an atmosphere, and a setting and a world, and the machinations and the kind of to and fro of different aspects of the people that are in the story and the people that are in the world. Mm-hmm. It's probably the best Lovecraft game since about 2000. When was Dark Comes to the Earth? The Bethesda one, 2005. But that's not saying much because a lot of them have been rubbish. It's very easy to do Lovecraft badly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, some would argue that Lovecraft did Lovecraft badly, but we'll leave that to another day.
And fighting words, sir. I mean, yes, he was a massive racist, but he do create some good worlds.
But hey, you can't hold it against him, right?
You have to have that stipulation. You have to say, I love Lovecraft, but he was a massive racist. You have to add it on. It's like a signature at the end.
Yeah, it's like by H.P. Lovecraft, a massive racist.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anywho,
anyway,
it's actually got a lot in common with the previous Lovecraft game, which was from Focus, which was the official game.
Yeah, that one was literally called Call of Cthulhu, right?
Which they started working on. This team that did this,
right? So this is Frogwares, yeah, and they're famous for their Sherlock Holmes games, right?
Yeah, and they left the project quite about a third through, I think. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the two games, they actually start incredibly similar. They can almost be the same game, but this kind of expands on, whereas kind of that stalled at the concept of I'm an investigator in the Lovecraft universe, and kind of didn't really go very far with it. This kind of does go further with it, and it adds like elements of the madness in and stuff like that, and then the investigative reporter type, the gumshoe type thing, which is quite fitting for the 20s, 30s era that it's in. It's got elements of the Sherlock Holmes games that. With Square Enix Murder Suspect game, when it was Gumshoe, the Ghost Gumshoe thing. It's got elements of Silent Hill. How it adds it all together, I think you would probably talk more about. Probably is debatable. I quite like it, but then I've played a lot of shonky survival horror games in my time.
Yeah. So I came away from this. Definitely a little underwhelmed, and it was mostly because of like the bits and pieces around it. I think the investigation mechanics are all right, and certainly for someone who hasn't played a lot of these types of games before, novel at the beginning when I first started playing it. But as I played more of it, I realized that it ended up being really repetitive and not really like I didn't feel like I was making these deductions myself. I felt like they were presenting me with evidence, and I was just kind of randomly putting two pieces together to see if it came to a conclusion. And I kept doing that over and over again, and that ended up kind of being the crux of the investigation stuff. It's like you go to a house, you find the clues, you get the little shreds of evidence, and then you put them together in what they call a mind palace, which I was very disappointed that it wasn't like a palace that you walked into and literally put pieces of evidence together. It's just kind of like a menu.
Yeah.
For something called a mind palace, I was expecting a little bit more.
More of a mind pinboard, I would say.
Yeah. In fact, as soon as I went into it, I was like, am I reading that right? Is it actually palace, or does that just say place?
You need more you need more mind string. Pin
Right.
the mind string to the mind pictures to join to the other mind picture and the mind note.
Right. Yeah, you can, and then the whole game, I'm Charlie Day from Always Sunny in Philadelphia pointing at a board.
Yeah.
Cthulhu!
Wide-eyed. Yeah, quite.
Squid monsters!
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a little underwhelming to me. The combat is just atrocious. I can't even. It's so unnecessary, in my opinion. Like, it didn't need to be there. They could have done something, I don't know, to make either just not have it in there at all, or put a little bit more time into refining it a little bit. But what I did really like about it was the setting, which is nothing real super original or anything like that, but it did have a good vibe. It's this city, this New England town that's been basically flooded by natural disasters and stuff like that, and like streets are literally flooded, so you can't even walk from building to building. You have to get in a boat and boat around, and all of this stuff is supernatural. It's the old gods are causing the ruckus, so to speak, as they do. And yeah, so the setting is really good, and I was enjoying some of the story. What I really was taking away from it was the characters. As we said earlier, H.P. Lovecraft is pretty famous for being a pretty big racist, and it comes up very frequently in his writing. Not in like a I hate X people or something like that, but more in like the way he portrays certain types of characters in a more positive light than they probably should be. Paints them
or
more
in a
sympathetic,
nationalistic sort of way as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and the main undertone of the story is you get off the boat and you immediately meet this guy named Throgmorton. He is an half ape, half human, but he is also a rich, influential person in the city. But he's not like self-made rich. You could tell it's like it's his legacy. Like he inherited his wealth, so his family goes back generations. He basically hires you to help find out what happened to his son, and throughout your interactions with him and other people in the town, you find out that there's this race of half fish, half human people that have basically sought refuge in Oakmont, and they are treated very poorly because they are seen as like kind of like bringing with them the turmoil, the natural disasters, and the madness that is also gripping the city. So they're blamed for something that is essentially not their fault, and there's a lot of parallels there to like modern immigration and certainly immigration of the time, 1920s, 30s. And it doesn't like shy away from it. It's very on the nose, very in your face, and it doesn't see like if Lovecraft had been the one that penned this story, you know, Throgmorton, like you said to me, Leigh, in a chat, would have been painted as a much more sympathetic character, whereas here he's shown for what he is, basically a racist, and using his power and wealth to not help these suffering people, basically, and instead using it to, you know, fund the library and the arts in a time of like total crisis, basically. Like the city is under siege. It's like it would be considered like a national emergency, and he's taking his time and money to make sure that the library is well stocked, which doesn't help the poor. It doesn't help the people that are suffering from the madness. It just helps the people that are already in a state of well-to-do, so to speak. And you can there are moments in this game where you can literally tell him to his face that he's a racist, and and you know he actually responds to it, not like in a like, well, you're an idiot or you're wrong or something like that. It actually seems like he takes it to heart. Whether or not that pans out or what the result of that is here nor there, but the game takes the kind of questionable source material and pulls out what we normally pull out from it, which is the creepy imagery, the madness, and the kind of supernatural occult stuff, but then also pulls with it the racial undertones and addresses it with a more modern approach to those kinds of issues. And that is where I ended up like really finding my interest in it, because I wanted to see where these different factions, these different groups of people clashed, and where they how you were able to kind of like manipulate that and use that to your advantage, like trying to like helping Throgmorton deal with his issues, but at the same time undermining him by not turning in the Innsmouthers that are basically committing crimes not of their own desire, but more because of the situation that they've been put into. And then that was most interesting stuff that I found out of it. It's just so much of the other stuff got in the way of a lot of my enjoyment of that. I also had a lot of performance issues, but they've corrected some of those, so I hope that they keep, you know, putting out patches to address some of it.
I think I was a lot more warmer to it than you. I think it's more my jam. It's more my thing. And I would say that it's kind of, if you're into the genre stuff, I think it's one of the better kind of horror genre third-person type games. It's not a kind of a AAA thing that's been along in a long time, but it does come with caveats, and that
Yeah.
is the corners that have been cut. And it's worth noting that kind of this team has always done very much investigative thrillers that are kind of very quite in a weird way linear, and they've kind of gone out on their own. They're not under the wing of Focus anymore. They've kind of gone out on their own. They've tried to please everybody.
Yeah.
By adding all these different elements and not quite pleased everybody.
Yeah.
And you can really see the seams. Like, for instance, character models. I've seen the same kind of 4 or 5 people with different wigs or different kind of hair pieces. I've seen the same fish man with different, like, kind of sideburns and stuff like that. And it's kind of, you start to notice the kind of the corner they've had to cut in a very ambitious game. Ambitious for them,
right? Then that ended up being like the conclusion in my review is like, this game is incredibly ambitious in the moments where it tries to go out of their comfort zone is where it starts to show its problems the most. And there are plenty of games that are ambitious and don't nail every single aspect of it, but unfortunately with this one, for me in particular, it leaned so heavily into those things where it wasn't nailing it that it started to detract from the things that it was doing well.
Like, I mean, I was
no, go ahead, sorry.
There's that thing within the first 10 minutes. You'll meet a character that's in. You start your first investigation. You'll see a character in there that's kind of has seen a murder, and he's a black chap. Is a African-American chap, and he's very memorable because he's one of the first characters you talk to, and you will see him dotted around as different characters throughout the thing so much that it does jar and it does kind of really stick out. It's like, well, it's him with a different wig. It's him with a pair of glasses. The same guy again. You keep seeing him over and over. But you don't think, well, that's just cheap and nasty. You just think, oh, that's a shame. And I think that's kind of a weird kind of, it's not like frustrating. You don't end up laughing at it. You just think, oh, that's a shame. That's just taking me out of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a testament to the whole atmosphere of the game that can do that and not make you laugh at it. You go, oh, you had me again, and now you've lost me because you're cutting corners.
Yeah, that's definitely like where it comes. And like in my opinion, this game didn't need to be open world either. There's so many streets that you just run down endlessly to get to your location that you need to get to. And they all look the same. They're neighborhoods and stuff like that, but for the most part, they're pretty similar looking. And then that's where you run into your issues where you see all of these repeating NPCs and like
car layouts.
Right, yeah. You'll literally get like 3 of the exact same like rusted out car, boom, 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 right next to each other. And
then they'll be like in the middle of the street in the same spots too. Like, I just passed that pattern. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And then like it NPCs will kind of load in on top of each other and then go about their routines. And one of the things that ended up striking me the most is that you see all of this movement around you, but there's no life. Like they aren't talking to each other. There isn't even like an ambient like crowd chatter or anything like that. The only thing you hear when you're running down the street is your footsteps. There isn't even like music playing or anything like that. It's just like it really feels like at least that part of the game was taken out of like 1 or 2 generations ago and put in here. And then you get to like the character models in the cutscenes where you're talking to them and stuff, and it looks like a completely different game. Like these are high resolution, sharp looking textures, juxtaposed with these empty streets and stuff like that. And it's just like you can tell that part of the team had what they had to do down pat, and another part of the team was like, well, we're doing what we can. This is the first time we've tried something like this, so maybe next time we'll get it right. But this time, it is what it is, and hopefully you don't mind it too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's too bad, but at the same time, I'm glad I was able to take away with it what I did. It would have been infinitely more worse if, on top of its shortcomings, it also ended up being a super racist game. If you look at it like that, it's at least trying to say something that a lot of other Lovecraft games don't always try to do.
No.
I'm curious, Derrick, you haven't played too much, but you have played the first few investigations. What are your initial thoughts on it, and has our discussion already made you regret your purchase, or are you still looking forward to it?
Okay, well, to start, I absolutely do not regret my purchase, just because I really like H.P. Lovecraft. I love the lore. I didn't get to play Call of Cthulhu, so being able to dive into this one, which kind of seemed like we were looking forward to this one a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like I said, I played the first mission, and I was kind of like taken back by it a little bit. And then kind of like got, you just kind of like work through it, and eventually, boom, okay, I finished it. I'm not sure how I did it because of the whole Mind Palace thing and tying that together. So I restarted again. And the second time I played through, I enjoyed it a lot more because I understood what was going on, how these little mechanics were working. With world building, I like the thing where they're like, oh, we barter here. There is no money because we are stuck here where we can't get out. There's
the dollar has no
going
value.
on. Yeah, so like that was really cool, like little detail that was just like, okay, this is cool. This fits for here. And like you guys were saying too, you kind of nailed it right on. Is like when you're in doing your investigations, everything's really great. But then when you're out and about in the world, it's just kind of like, okay, these are the same things. Maybe that part of the world didn't need to be as big. But on the flip side of that, something I really like is the map and being able to pin on the map and mark, okay, you come up to the spot and it's blocked off. The map doesn't show you that. But you can now mark the map and be like, okay, this is a dead end, or okay, there's danger there, or there's something you want to come back to over here. I thought that was a pretty cool little detail added into it. Whether down the line it becomes just a tedious thing you're doing now, because of like kind of how big and open the map size is, just from looking at it. Like I haven't got to go super far out into it. But it was just a cool little feature there that they had. So like, they hit some things and then other things they don't hit. One of the things I'd agree with too is like when you're talking to the characters and having your like face-to-face interactions, it's awesome. Like you said, they're well detailed, the words are lining up, their expressions and movement, dealing with them is great. And then like you said, which when you're going out running around, you're going to see the same models here and there. So yeah, but I'm definitely looking forward to continue on. Actually, after we're done here, I'm gonna continue on some more tonight. So I don't think I don't regret it. It'll just be seeing if it doesn't become like repetitive down the line. Like I'm not sure how many cases there are, but is each case going to be the same? So we'll see. I'm just interested in to see what happens, and if anything, I've got that story out of it. So
and if I find out that they like the performance right now is okay, but it definitely has a couple of rough spots still. If I find that I hear that they completely smoothed it out or something like that, I may be tempted to go back in and try to I don't know. I keep coming back to the combat, and honestly, unless they put out a patch that says, okay, you could turn combat off if you want, it's probably going to be a hard sell for me to get me back in.
It worked for Vampire.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
I still haven't gone back to that yet, though, either. It was actually funny when I first started playing this. I got like this huge like sensation of like, wow, this is just like Vampire. like in terms of presentation and perceived budget and like what they were trying to do with what they had and stuff like that. It felt a lot. It felt pretty like on par. I think Vampire in general is probably a little bit more like, I don't know. I guess I'd have to go back and actually do a point-to-point comparison. But yeah, I also didn't really enjoy the combat in that. But I will say that the combat in Vampire is better than The Sinking City. It's at least more fleshed out, more responsive, and feels more like a modern game than what the combat. I can't get over the shooting in this game. I'm sorry.
I think you forgot about the shooting in Vampire as well then, because that was shit.
I did mostly melee combat in Vampire.
Oh Lord.
But it had like a whole like Dark Souls kind of combat system, so it was definitely more fleshed out than what this game has. All right. As long as we all set, or do we have any more final thoughts on The Sinking City?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
All right. In that case, thank you for joining us on this very special episode of Voxel Viewpoint. If you'd like to hear or see more, please consider subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app, subscribing to us on YouTube, or visiting voxelvoice.com, where all of our great content comes together in one place. Also check out the Voxel Voice Facebook group, where you can join in on the discussion with a great like-minded community.